Thanks, everybody. Welcome to Build. I'm your host, Ricky Camilleri. Our next guest is the star of a show that is sadly coming to an end. FX's You're the Worst. For 5 seasons, Chris Geere has played Jimmy, a selfish, self-centered, self-destructive writer dealing with the pain of falling and being in love. Let's take a look.
You have given me a gift no one has before. Acceptance. Unconditional acceptance. Jimmy, it's all I ever wanted. I finally feel truly safe.
Oh, I'm genuinely touched.
So safe, in fact.
What are you doing there?
So safe, I feel like I can do anything and you'll never leave me, no matter what I do.
Why would you do that?
It's a metaphor for how I can do anything I want now.
Yeah, a metaphor I'll be cleaning up.
You know you don't need to fix my problems, Jimmy.
So you're gonna clean it up?
Cleaning it up ruins the metaphor.
Chris Geere, everybody, let's hear it! Congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
Because, congratulations on having a show, getting a show, doing a number of seasons of a show, doing a number of seasons of a good show, and then on top of that, having what I found to be one of the most satisfying finales of a show I've seen. It was beautiful, it was hilarious, it was sad, it actually made me cry, which I was not expecting at all, and it was also just wildly satisfying, and it's so difficult for people to pull that off. The most talented writers cannot pull that off sometimes because it's really hard.
It is. As you said, I think it's so rare these days to actually have a beginning, a middle, and an end for a show, and for it to be continuously satisfying, or to ask questions, or to be challenging. I think the emotional range that the show covers is phenomenal, and I hear from people all the time about it's going to end in tears. Or is it, or isn't it? I mean, it's kind of, I think it's important that everyone goes through that emotional journey. And, but I think it ends right. That would be the best way to describe it. It feels right.
It reminded me of the finale of 6 Feet Under back in the day. And I don't want to give anything away, but the way in which Steven, the showrunner, goes about it, it reminded me a lot of that finale and how satisfying it was and how much the show cared about its characters and still wanted to see through everything.
Yeah, there's an element of hope with the show that has been like it from the beginning. I think we hope that they're going to end up together. Are they going to be happy together? And then you're questioning other things, and then are they going to walk off into the sunset together? Probably not, but they will.
No one does. That's
no one
not
does.
A relationship.
Exactly. This is why I'm so proud to be a part of the show, because we destroyed my love of romantic comedies completely. Because I was obsessed for years with romantic comedies, no matter how predictable the whole structure of it was. I loved them because I felt like it was an escape from my own life. But with watching You're the Worst, it's from an empathetic point of view. You can go, there are other people who are as messed up as I am in this broken world, yet there is hope, and people are deserving of love, however troubled or flawed you may be.
What I loved about You're the Worst is it's so much about the expectations that we have of each other and our relationships based off of those notions of romantic comedies and what we've grown up with and what we think love and relationships should be. And so much of You're the Worst is Jimmy and Gretchen coming to terms with what they're not and what they are, and what's beautiful about that and what's supportive about that.
And disagreeing with and not conforming to the things that we have been brainwashed into thinking means a good relationship. You must be, I grew up thinking, it might be just a British thing, I don't know, but I grew up thinking I must be married by this age. I must have children by this point. I must have this much in my bank account, whatever. And the world's a very different place right now. We make our own rules. We can be the bosses of our own life, and so we can write whatever story we want to write. And Jimmy and Gretchen have always not conform to anything that's thrown in their way by society or their families, and that's refreshing. It's refreshing for an audience to watch something and go, I think like that. And I love that, and I love bumping into people just in the street who go, thanks so much for telling that story, because that meant the world to me, because I thought I was alone, but I'm not.
What's so interesting about that conformity that you talk about is that it's really based off of a period of like 30-year history.
Yeah.
Because before that, you were married when you were a teenager and then died when you were like 23. And then life got expanded. And then people like got married in their 20s. And then by like the 90s, people were like, this doesn't make any sense. So it was like 30 or 40 years where there was an expectation to be married in like your 20s.
Isn't it
or
funny
have
how
money
you-
in your bank account.
How funny you grow up thinking that your parents, you're like, oh, these guys know everything.
Yeah.
These guys are so...
And they
they've
did it
crushed
right.
They did it all right. How old were you and got married? 19? Brilliant. I had no idea what I was doing at any point, anywhere near that. And, now we're older and wiser and selfish in a good way when it comes to relationships. And we go after and crave what we think we deserve and we want. But we'll constantly question that. We will never settle. And I love that. Jimmy and Gretchen never settled. They never said, right, I'm going to, now that we're together and we're living together, that's it. I'm just going to phone it in for the rest of our relationship. They're constantly questioning each other and themselves. And I
They're
love
constantly trying to get better at being with each other and at being who they are and think they can be in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I love how Jimmy seems completely oblivious to recognizing that he needs to change in order for their relationship to progress, which I think makes such a big point when he does learn that he needs to compromise.
Well, he thinks that she needs to change
Yes,
because she has
that's where the comedy comes from.
larger problem, seemingly the larger, bigger problem.
Yeah.
She suffers from mental illness in a way. So he can kind of always look at her
Yeah.
and be like, well, this is a thing that you're doing.
And that's hilarious. One of my favorite scenes of this season was when Jimmy had some bad news at work and decided that his sadness that followed was depression. And so he'd wake up the next day and he said, Gretchen, I've bested my depression. It only took him 24 hours to get over it. And he was like, oh, I really appreciate what you're going through and all that. It's just, that's how an awful lot of society live in this blinkered world where they don't fully understand or want to understand anything outside of their own bubble. And Jimmy has had a bubble from day one that he doesn't want anyone to penetrate. And the season, especially last season and this season, burst that bubble.
Well, I think the bubble has kind of changed per season as well at times, right? Like in this season, his bubble is, I'm a good boyfriend, or I'm a good fiance, I'm going to be a good husband. And these are the things that sort of make me that, which is planning a wedding, getting all these things in order. Yeah. And he's not doing any of the actual things that require him to be a good partner, which is like noticing that Gretchen is in trouble again and thinking of how to help her. He's in a kind of denial.
Yes, total denial. But when he does it, when he does recognize, even though to most people, they'd be like, this is obvious. This is where you need to do something for your partner. And he doesn't. That's funny. Yeah. But when he does finally realize, I have to do this now. I have to be that guy now. That's really rewarding because that's small, tiny bits of growth that happen. And that's how brilliant the writing has been from the beginning, is that we can switch tones in the space of 23 minutes, like really quickly go from a slapsticky type scene, which is quite broad and exaggerated, to heart-wrenching moments that I think have made You're the Worst pretty popular, which is great.
That's one thing that I love about You're the Worst, as well as that it's not a dramedy, it's a comedy. And you can go, as much as there are heartbreaking moments or heart-rendering moments, it is still, at its core, a comedy and has multiple jokes per page and is moving like lightning to tell this story. Because I think so often, and it came out right around the same time as this, shows were trying to be these dramedy things that I would watch, and I would be like, could you put a couple more jokes in here, guys? It doesn't seem like you're working hard enough.
I still don't understand the whole what is comedy. I do get quite lost, actually. I think if you put the studio sitcom in the same category as something that's not in your face funny at all. I mean, is it? We grew up thinking that the comedy was something where you were watching a studio sitcom and you're told when to laugh, basically. And now they've relinquished control of that, and now we can decide what is funny and what isn't. And to some people it is, and some people it isn't. I think there are different moments in You're the Worst that are on a studio sitcom level of broadness,
Yeah.
and then other bits that seem like it's nowhere near comedy. But I love that we're in the generation where comedy is really changing. I'm just thrilled to be a part of it this time.
Well, the comedy also opens up empathy in so many ways. So by the time we get to those heartbreaking moments, you feel it even more. You know.
You remember the "you stayed" moment when Jimmy leaves and Gretchen has a huge kind of attack of depression, and then he makes the fort for her out of. I just thought that was stunning. That was so brilliantly written and felt more poignant to me than any romantic comedy I'd seen.
What are you gonna do
Now,
Yeah.
well,
I hate to ask someone that question coming from a show, but you are coming from a great show.
You got to be super careful now.
Me? You.
No, I have.
Oh, okay.
One has
You're like,
after.
you have to be super careful because I'm really sensitive right now. I'm a raw nerve, man.
No, I think there's. I mean, the industry is fickle anyway. So you make one wrong turn and see you later. I just think I have been blessed with such gold for the last 5 years that even now I'm reading scripts and going, it's got to be as good as, if not better than You're the Worst. They set the bar so ridiculously high that I just think it's important. What I've learned is what I want to work with great people with great creativity that enjoy a good time on set. It shouldn't, you hear these horror stories about cast members or directors or just atmospheres on set that aren't conducive to the creative process. And so I am going to take my time to find something which is either fun or inspiring or kind of makes me a little bit scared. I think it's good to go back to that. I can openly say, quite candidly say, that I need to shed Jimmy.
Right.
Because as sad as that is, I've become him, he's become me. It's like being in a relationship for 5 years.
That also happens because of writers as well, right? Your writers start to...
They start writing for you, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Jimmy originally was this kind of schlubby American guy and, really bitter and angry. And the first season I was performing from scripts that were written months in advance, really, that were slightly adapted. But then they slowly started writing for me.
Right.
And so he became me and I became him. And that was... And our facial expressions and Jimmy-isms and all these things. Stephen would write in the script, he would say, he'd do Jimmy's classic dismissive shrug, right? Which I was like, what is that? And he goes, that thing you always do. And I was like, that's it. I was like, all right, well, that was me becoming Jimmy, Jimmy becoming me. So I need to get rid of all that now. It's like being in a relationship and going to specific restaurants with that person, and suddenly you're not with them anymore. You shouldn't really go to that restaurant anymore. Or try something new, go and do something new. So I'm going to use this time to really kind of figure out.
I've interviewed every cast member of the main
Am I your favorite?
The main cast. You are 100% in the top 4.
Top 4, brilliant answer.
But it is something that I've noticed that each of you are, in some ways, in other ways, not at all, more like your characters, or I think than people who come on from other shows. And I don't mean that in any of the sort of negative ways, but Aya, in a lot of ways, it feels like they write to her, and the more she's started coming on in the first season, and the more that the show has progressed, I've noticed that they're writing very much for her. And the same with like Desmond. Desmond comes here and he's just like all heart, and you're like, of course you're that character. And Heather comes in and it's like, yeah, I totally get why they write for you like this. It just it's not that often that you see writers of shows really getting their actors the way that it seems like the show has gotten you guys.
They've always been very generous with working to our strengths, but also throwing us in the deep end. I mean, we got to do an awful lot of very cool activities and scenes that made us uncomfortable. That became a bit of a thing. bit of a sideline joke, like what can we. It started very cool, like, Heather's got a lovely voice, let's make her sing, or Desi enjoys cooking, let's make Edgar a big, cooker of breakfast and things like that. But with me, it was always it felt like, how can we embarrass him this week? So the nudity and the...
Well, you're the handsome lead. Like, that's...
No,
that has to...
I don't know. That's very sweet, I think.
the thing that the writers do to the handsome lead. Like, what can we do to make him uncomfortable?
I did like how they made me look super cool in some scenes. I was like, this is it. This is how I want to feel. And then the next scene, it's like, and you go in your trailer and all there is this sock. And you're like, just wearing that today.
What was the hardest scene that you shot over the 5 seasons?
The hardest scene was during the Depression storyline. There was a scene where Gretchen's lying on the couch the whole time, and I had a 4-page rant about how I was angry with her for not talking to me about how she was feeling. And not understanding, Jimmy did not understand in any way how she was feeling about the condition, anything bar himself. And so not only did I have a gazillion lines I had to remember and keep that intensity, but also I was having to fight every single natural reaction that I wanted to do. See, I wanted to go and hug her. I wanted to keep it calm and have eye contact and just say it's going to be all right, And
you wanted to be a decent human being.
Yeah. And yet the story, of course, shouldn't allow me to do that. So I had to fight all of that. And it was a really tricky season, but ultimately so rewarding,
So not any of the sex scenes, not any of the
the
humiliating moments. It's really
sex scenes were always they were a part of the story that we needed to tell. That their sexual relationship was a huge part of their relationship, of course. As an actor, Aya and I became super close straight away, and it was literally, as they say, doing a dance, and you've got 8 people in the room at the same time as you. So it's just part of the job. And after a while, we're like, I was nervous. I think it was my 3rd day when we shot the sex scene from the pilot. My 3rd ever day on an American show. Big, responsibility. I was like, I could do this. I'm cool. Terrifying. But by the time,
like, let's fuck!
Let's do this. I'm really prepared. I know what I'm doing. But then by the time you get to season 5, you literally, as I said, you walk into the trailer and you see your modesty pouch and you go, whatever, let's do it.
Right. You're like the grip watching a sex scene at that point. Like, hey, all right, let's
checking
go.
phone.
You guys, I imagine you've all become friends over the course of the last 5 seasons.
Really have. Yeah.
How do you maintain friendships like that after something like this ends?
We have several different apps that we connect through. Just leaving each other kind of bullet points of what's going on in our lives and checking in on each other. We talk all the time. It's always been pretty rare that of a cast of a show that's gone on for so long are still so in touch. But we've been through a hell of a lot together. I mean, we've had children and got married and been in and out of relationships and bought houses and had some sad news and happy news. We've been through everything. And also being in the show changed all of us because, my son was 6 weeks old when I got this job, and he's 7 this year. And that, when you see through how children have grown and how you have grown, how your roles have grown in life. We were just actors trying to get some sort of recognition. But over the course of that, we became the characters. We became, I became a father and a husband and needed much more in different parts of my life. And all of us have been through that. And you can either gel during that time or not. And we totally gelled. And we still go for beers together, and we go out for Sunday Fundays together, and I'm hoping it will always be that way, despite the distance between us all.
There's a big difference between the 6-year growth between like 20 and 26 and like 30 and 36.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a much different kind of connection if you're next to someone between those 6 years than I think between 20 and 26.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think the level of, I had a level of desperation, I think, about getting work, finding work, being recognized, doing something that was credible, all these things. And I had no idea. I was going in completely blind. It was my first real American job, and I didn't want to fail. And yet I'm standing in the room with 3 seemingly really confident, talented people that I later find out are as terrified as I am.
Your castmates?
Yeah. So
Heather told me that she was essentially I think she told me she was going to quit before she got
we
the
were
job.
all, bar Desi, I think, terrified that we were going to get fired after the table read. That there would be an alternative. Why would they choose me, you know? And I wish I could go back to season 1 me and say, enjoy this, will you? Don't worry, enjoy the moment. Because now it's done, I just look back with a fond heart and feel extremely, extremely fortunate.
When did you start enjoying it?
Just recently. Because I can watch it back now. And because I think there's always that feeling at the end of each season, you're going, every actor will feel the same. A, will the show be received well? B, will we get the opportunity to do it again? And so you can always find this kind of negativity. If you want to, you can find it somewhere. But I finished this season, and I went, no, this is dope. What we've just done, that is brilliant. And we enjoyed it, and we never got sad or emotional about it too early. But when we got to the end, we felt like pretty numb. But it was, I've watched them all now, and I got sent them. And I watched them, and I was just like, this is cool. This is really cool. But I could only do that now that it's finished. If we were waiting on promise of a potential season 6,
right,
then my answer would be different. But I wish I'm just trying to learn to enjoy the moment a little bit more, rather than being concerned about what will be. Think,
what's next and what to find.
Yes,
and all
exactly.
That stuff.
We are constantly as a race. We are trying to better ourselves, which we should do. But you need to be careful how you do that. You be a better person, grow, but enjoy it as well. Because before you know it, you've had all these experiences, and you haven't embraced them. It's like looking at photos of a vacation when you get home, rather than seeing the vacation with both your eyes.
It's like when you're on vacation and you're like, you know where we should go next?
Yes.
And your partner's like, we're on vacation right
Or you're in a wonderful restaurant and you go, oh, do you know what's a brilliant restaurant? Isn't it strange how we do that?
I do it all the time.
I do it all the time. And I went back, and my instinct was to say, oh, what's going to happen next? And I sat down, and I was just watching TV with my son and having popcorn. And we just went, and he went, love you, Dad. And I was like, that's what it's all about. This is it. Right here, right now. This is cool. I'm going to enjoy this. And I'm hoping that I can try and do that with different aspects of my life far more from now. I think the show has taught me that.
Oh, that's amazing. We have time for a couple questions. What do we got?
Hi, I was wondering if you have a go-to karaoke song?
Yeah. It's Endless Love. I always find, my wife is a singer, so I always try and do it with her, or anyone that's willing. You know, my love, there's only you in my heart. And we do that after a few beers, mind, but I do enjoy a good power ballad. I'm not going to lie to you.
One more. What do we got? Hey there.
I have a question from our website. So we're wondering, how much improv are you guys allowed to do on the show?
None. Absolutely nothing. I think there was, I mean, it's so brilliantly written, but it's been so crafted over the course of the whole writer's room that we can't just come in and change things. So if there's anything that we think could add to it, we have a discussion in between takes. But on the whole, no, not at all.
So quick, you can't really.
It's so quick.
You can't add to those beats, otherwise it's a domino effect.
Exactly. And what I've noticed that people kind of talk over each other quite a lot when improv is allowed, and there's no room for that. You've got to shoot 15 pages a day. The producer's going, "Can you stop ad-libbing? Can we hurry up, please?" So for this production specifically, there was no improv, but I'm quite excited to do something that is like that. Yeah.
Well, again, congratulations.
Thank you.
On the whole show, man. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. And,
Of course.
Yeah.
When does the finale air? The finale is
Finale airs next Wednesday night.
Next Wednesday
That's
night.
episode 13, and that is the end.
Tonight is the
Tonight is the
penultimate.
penultimate. And one of my favorite episodes of the entire series is tonight. Brilliantly shot. There's a scene, everyone kind of shines a little bit. There's a scene between Gretchen and her mum, which will blow you away, which is really cool. And I got to smash a TV with a hammer, so that was pretty dope.
Chris Geere, everybody, let's hear it.
Thank you.